Decade after decade, the ancient world bled. The military machines of Syria, ruled by the king of the north, and Egypt, ruled by the king of the south, threw endless waves of soldiers against one another across the Levant. These relentless campaigns drained royal treasuries and left frontier cities in ruins. Both empires reached a point of total physical and financial exhaustion. They needed a way out. The Egyptian sovereign Ptolemy II proposed a truce sealed by blood. He would send his own daughter, the young and radiant Berenice, across the border to marry the Syrian king, Antiochus II. This silver coin shows us the face of that northern king, Antiochus II. By accepting this Egyptian princess into his court, he was agreeing to anchor a fragile new alliance. This specific political maneuver was explicitly detailed in the prophetic text of Daniel 11:6, which described an agreement forged between the daughter of the south and the king of the north at the end of years. There was no romance in this union. It was a cold, calculated transaction, a desperate attempt by two battered courts to force a truce onto bleeding nations. But the treaty demanded a heavy toll. To marry Berenice, Antiochus was forced to divorce his first wife, Laodice, and banish her from the center of power. Berenice arrived in a hostile capital. She was a solitary Egyptian royalty, isolated in a Syrian palace, surrounded by shifting loyalties and foreign guards. Looking at these stone busts of Ptolemaic royalty, we see the human reality of this diplomatic pawn. Berenice was a real woman pulled from her home and placed directly into the crosshairs of a rival court. And that rival, the banished Queen Laodice, was not entirely gone. Court whispers noted that she retained a vast, shadowy network of political allies who waited quietly for their moment. When diplomacy relies on stripping a queen of her crown and treating a princess as currency, the resulting peace carries the seeds of its own destruction. For a brief window, the royal wedding in Antioch gave the illusion of lasting peace. Yet beneath the celebrations, everyone knew Berenice's safety relied entirely on the imposing shadow of her father in Egypt. In 246 BC, Ptolemy II died. The geopolitical shield keeping his daughter alive evaporated overnight. Antiochus did not hesitate. He immediately abandoned the Egyptian alliance, discarded Berenice, and invited Laodice back into his chambers and his inner circle. Shortly after her return, Antiochus suddenly dropped dead. Official reports cited natural causes. The quiet accusations circulating the marble halls pointed directly to Laodice and a vial of poison. International protections are only as durable as the monarchs who enforce them. With the architects of the peace treaty rotting in their tombs, the human palms they left behind were entirely defenseless. Laodice seized control and moved with ruthless precision. She ordered her assassins to execute both Berenice and her newborn son. The symbol of the grand Egyptian alliance bled out on the marble floors of the palace. The covenant was dead. This brutal climax mirrored the second half of Daniel 11:6, which warned that the daughter of the south shall not retain the power of the arm and would ultimately be given up. We map the eradication of this treaty on this family tree. The father in the south dies. The Syrian husband is eliminated. Finally, the queen and heir are crossed out. With opposition wiped out, Laodice places her son, Seleucus II, on the northern throne. Berenice's horrific execution proved that a paper treaty offers zero protection against deeply entrenched personal wrath. The words of the ancient text played out exactly as written. When word of the slaughtered princess finally traveled down the coast and reached the palaces of the Nile, the grief completely paralyzed the Egyptian court. But Berenice had a brother. Ptolemy III Euergetes ascended to the Egyptian throne, transforming his mourning into absolute, targeted rage. This marble bust captures the likeness of Ptolemy III. He was no longer looking for diplomatic leverage. He was marching northward to exact retribution. He mobilized the Egyptian military and triggered the Third Syrian War, tearing through the northern borders to hunt down Laodice and her newly crowned son. Daniel 11:7 foretold this exact retaliatory strike, stating that a branch of her roots would rise up, enter the fortress of the northern king, and prevail. A border dispute ends when one side runs out of resources. A blood feud ends only when the enemy is completely annihilated. Ptolemy III stormed the Syrian fortresses. His armies crushed the forces of Seleucus II, seizing control of entire regions across Syria and Cilicia. He stripped the wealth from the conquered northern temples, loading Egyptian wagons with unimaginable amounts of silver and gold to carry back across the desert. Among the spoils were 2,500 sacred artifacts, like these bronze statues, stolen from Egypt generations earlier by the Persians. Ptolemy III reclaimed them all. Daniel 11:8 confirmed this conclusion, writing that the victor would carry captive into Egypt their gods and precious vessels of silver and gold. Ptolemy III returned home as an avenging hero, but the violence left a permanent scar. Beneath the ashes of the ruined treaty, the resentment between the two empires continued to smolder. Treaties built on the sacrifice of human lives guarantee future slaughter. The blood of Berenice stained the ancient world, proving that the brutal maneuvers of these empires moved in lockstep with the warnings of the prophets.